As the staff at the Polar Pavilion broadcasted a missing person announcement, Jason waited for a long time before realizing a problem. His mom had a poor sense of direction, couldn't read maps, and had managed to get lost in the Polar Pavilion. How could she possibly find the visitor service station in a short time? Realizing this, he felt anxious and hurriedly walked out. Lily, pushing the child, waited outside. Seeing him come out, she said, "I'm waiting here, you should go and look again." Jason nodded, and in his mind, he pictured the old lady wandering alone in some remote corner, feeling a bit choked up. I don't know if her phone is lost or out of battery. It's been off all this time. If I had known, I wouldn't have brought her here. Originally, she didn't want to come. Lily, blaming herself, lowered her head. I always thought Mom didn't want to come, just reluctant to spend extra money on tickets. I thought since we're all out for fun, leaving her alone at home wouldn't be good. That's why I insisted on bringing her. It's all my fault. Jason said, "Blame yourself for what? If anyone is to blame, blame me. If I hadn't suggested playing this maze house, she would have stayed with us." She said her eyes were uncomfortable and wanted to go out first. I should have told her to wait in place. Well, blaming anyone now is useless. I'll go look for her. Jason quickened his pace, weaving through various attractions in the Polar Pavilion, occasionally shouting his mom Sarah's name. However, with the holiday rush and a multitude of visitors, the surroundings were noisy and bustling. His calls were like a leaf falling into a lake, attracting only a few curious glances, without any echoes. Growing more anxious, Jason feared that the next moment he might find his mom collapsed somewhere. He recalled when he was 7, Sarah took him to the city to visit relatives. It was his first time in the city, everything seemed novel, and he bounced around, darting everywhere. Sarah chased after him, yelling not to run around, but he refused to listen. In the blink of an eye, when he turned around, he couldn't find her. Faced with unfamiliar crowds and surroundings, he cried loudly, wanting to go back the way he came, but he couldn't recognize where he had come from, so he walked further and further away. The fear he experienced at the age of 7 was still vivid in his memory at the age of 37. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. Sarah must be feeling the same as he did back then, wanting to go back the way she came, but walking further and further away, undoubtedly trapped in panic. An hour later, Jason found Sarah in the animal area of the Polar Pavilion. Sarah sat quietly on the outskirts of the Arctic Hare viewing area, motionless. When Jason saw the smile on her face from the side, he felt both relieved and angry. Relieved that she wasn't afraid of being alone in an unfamiliar place, and angry that she didn't say anything, causing him so much worry. He loudly asked, "Mom, how did you end up here by yourself?" Sarah turned her head towards the sound, paused, then understood the accusation in Jason's words. She stood up abruptly, saying, "Oh, I forgot. I thought you guys might take a while to come out, so I decided to take a stroll. Somehow, I got lost and ended up here without realizing it. I found this Arctic hare quite interesting. It's really big, with long legs. I just watched it for a while. Why didn't you call me?" Jason sighed helplessly. "Your phone was off." Sarah awkwardly fished her phone out of her pocket, shaking it around. "It ran out of battery. I forgot to charge it this morning." Jason asked again, "Didn't you hear my broadcast looking for you?" Sarah, feeling a bit guilty, shook her head. "I'm sorry, son. It's too noisy here, and I didn't hear it. I made you worry." Jason realized his attitude was not great. He took a breath and said softly, "Worrying is a small thing. Lily and I are just afraid you might be in danger. In the future, when you're in an unfamiliar place, stick close to us." Sarah nodded obediently, like a child. Jason then asked, "Do you still want to see the Arctic hare? I can accompany you for a bit longer." Sarah quickly waved her hand. "No need, let's hurry and meet up with Lily." Finally, the family gathered together. After all the commotion, everyone's enthusiasm was dampened, and they hastily went through the remaining attractions in a cursory manner. On the way home, Sarah sat quietly beside the child's safety seat, not uttering a word throughout the journey. At a red light, Jason glanced through the rearview mirror and saw Sarah leaning against the back seat with her eyes tightly closed. Thinking she had fallen asleep, Jason was surprised to notice what seemed to be a tear streak on Sarah's face when he started the car. In that moment, it felt like something hit him in the chest, and he gripped the steering wheel uncomfortably. He realized that this might not be the first time Sarah silently shed tears. His recent harsh attitude seemed to have become a habit, and unconsciously, he might have made Sarah quietly sad multiple times. Since when, he wondered? Probably from the time when both of them needed to carefully guess each other's thoughts. Upon arriving home, Lily laughed loudly, playing with the child to create a deliberately cheerful atmosphere after the outing, downplaying the impact of the unexpected events. Handing the child over to Sarah, Lily sat down, and they looked at photos on their phones together. Sarah, holding the child, forced herself to engage in the discussion with Lily. The underwater tunnel was beautiful, the polar bear was huge, the sharks were truly frightening, the emperor penguins were the cutest, and the rays looked like ghosts. Jason watched from a distance, physically and mentally exhausted. He knew Lily meant well, and he also knew Sarah didn't want to brush off this well-intentioned effort. Their mother-daughter-in-law relationship was already quite good, and he didn't need to worry about it like many of his colleagues. However, at this moment, he felt a bit weary of this harmony. Because he knew that, except for the oblivious child, everyone in this family was tired. Many times, he thought about suggesting that Sarah go back to her hometown, but the words stuck in his throat. Because doing so would be ungrateful and heartless. Since Lily became pregnant, he brought Sarah from her hometown to take on the role of a nanny, cleaning the house, and preparing nutritious meals for Lily. Sarah worked hard, but she did it willingly. Later, when the child was born, with Sarah juggling multiple roles and unable to keep up, Jason hired a postpartum caregiver. Sarah quietly stepped back, taking on a logistical role. After the postpartum caregiver left, Sarah took care of the child while finding time to do household chores. Jason suggested hiring a housekeeper 3 times, but each time, Sarah refused. She said if they hired a housekeeper, what use would she have? It would be better for her to go back to her hometown. From that point on, Jason found it challenging to grasp Sarah's true thoughts. Was it genuinely that she didn't want a housekeeper, or was she afraid of spending money? If they hired help, would she feel relieved or feel rejected? Speculating along these lines, he could create a vast mental map. Feeling mentally exhausted, he decided to go along with Sarah's literal meaning. The matter of hiring a housekeeper was then put on hold, and the family of 4 supported each other, working together. They finally managed to get through the most challenging 3 years. Now that the child is in kindergarten, this home indeed doesn't require Sarah as much. As the tumultuous days have passed, with newfound leisure and space, the conflicts between the young and old living under the same roof are becoming increasingly apparent. Unlike the clangorous conflicts in their home, these conflicts are intricate and mysterious. There is no quarreling or resentment. Instead, everyone shows mutual courtesy, silently compromises, and maintains a remarkably peaceful atmosphere. The specific manifestation of the conflict is that the whole family treads carefully, trying to understand each other's thoughts, considering each other's emotions, silently compromising with each other, leaving only individual internal struggles. Just thinking about the possibility of living like this for the rest of his life, Jason feels a profound sense of despair. He fervently wishes for a day when Sarah would voluntarily say, "Son, I've helped raise your child. Lily has time to pick up the child after work. Whether I'm here or not, it doesn't matter. I should go back to my hometown. I feel uncomfortable and uneasy living in your house." But Sarah has never shown such an inclination. She voluntarily picks up and drops off the child every day, keeps the house impeccably clean, and competes with Lily in the kitchen every day. She gives off a pleasing vibe, like preschoolers who behave well to earn praise and stickers from their teachers. For Jason, her efforts to prove her worth and gain approval from her son and daughter-in-law make him feel that she is seeking recognition and permission to stay in the small family and enjoy family life. Thinking of this, Jason becomes even more reluctant. He can't bear to send Sarah back to her hometown, nor can he bear to rent another house for her in the same neighborhood, nor can he bear to do anything that might make Sarah feel rejected. This is how it is, he thinks. Although the current days are a bit stifling, they are still much better than those families where mother-in-law and daughter-in-law fight every day. He should be content. As the days go by, at the end of July, Jason's cousin received an admission letter from a prestigious university. She called Jason's family to invite them to celebrate. On the day before the feast, Jason drove his family back to his cousin's home. After dinner, Sarah took Lily, the child, and relatives outside to chat and cool off. Jason drove his cousin to a nearby supermarket to buy cigarettes. In the car, his cousin suddenly sighed and said, "Your mom has been quite tired these years. I can see she's aging fast." Jason said, "Yeah, she can't stay idle, taking care of the child and doing household chores. It has lightened the burden for Lily and me." His cousin hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make up her mind halfway through the journey. "Jason, if you two can manage, just let your mom come back." Jason said, "Huh? Cousin, what do you mean? Is my mom willing to come back? If I ask her to come back now, wouldn't it be like unburdening the donkey of its load?" His cousin made a disapproving sound. "Before your mom moved to your place, she entrusted many things to the neighbors. The orchids are at my place, the big cat and the big white rabbit are at old Yang's place next door, and the little black dog is at old Zhao's place." She often mentioned her old treasures in our group, worrying a lot. "A few days ago, the rabbit she had raised for many years passed away, and your mom was really upset." Jason's heart skipped a beat, vaguely recalling that Sarah used to have many pets and plants back in their hometown. At the same time, he remembered the day at the Arctic Pavilion, Sarah's expression when she looked at the Arctic rabbits, so devoted, so affectionate. In that moment of shifting shadows and bustling voices, he didn't sense Sarah's deeply hidden sorrow. Was her beloved big rabbit the one that passed away then? But he knew nothing about it. Jason felt a heavy weight in his chest and stammered, I always thought my mom was willing to live with us. I did consider sending her back, but I felt that it would be too harsh." His cousin sighed, "All right, I'll talk to you about this." After the celebration feast, Sarah didn't ride back with the car. At the intersection bidding farewell, Sarah looked at Jason as if she had a lot to say. However, she only repeatedly reminded Lily and the child to be careful and not to stay out in the coolness for too long. The child cried, and she cried too, but she never uttered the words, "Grandma, come home with us." She rarely seized this opportunity, finally able to break free from the cautious and exhausting life. Even though she felt heartbroken for her grandson, she was unwilling to turn back. Jason said, "Mom, I'll pack your luggage and send it back once I get home." Sarah wiped away her tears. "Okay, use regular delivery, no need for an expensive one, there's no rush." Jason thought for a moment and asked, "Why didn't you say earlier that you didn't want to live with us?" Sarah replied, "I thought you still needed this old woman. If I have to steel myself and endure it. I can't just watch you without caring. Who would have known you couldn't wait for me to leave? Actually, I've been eager to come back sooner." In the familiar surroundings of her hometown, Sarah seemed like a fish swimming freely in the water. She spoke more playfully, and her voice was noticeably brighter. Jason looked at the Sarah before him, saw the light in her eyes, her carefree laughter, and finally could be sure that Sarah genuinely wanted to return to live alone in her hometown, not for anyone else's sake. He could finally let go of his worries, no longer fearing accusations of using his mother and then casting her aside. He dared to face his own feelings. All along, he cared more about his reputation than his mother's feelings. When considering the question of whether to send his mother back to live in her hometown, he thought more about whether he would face societal criticism, whether he would be accused by his mother, and whether he could be at peace with himself. Otherwise, how could he overlook his mother's big cat, big rabbit, little flower dog, and those once treasured plants and animals? He used to think of himself as an impeccable filial son, possessing the most traditional family ties and spiritual inheritance. When his father fell seriously ill, he insisted on treatment until the last moment of life. When his mother moved in under their roof, he did his best to play the role of a peacemaker. Fortunately, Lily was similar to him. They cared more about their reputation than each other's feelings, even more than the feelings of the other person. Unfortunately, Sarah was also such a person. Blood may be thicker than water, but not everyone who walks through the door is family. They were all silently tormenting themselves, unconsciously tormenting others. Jason regretted not opening up earlier. In this family, he should have played the role of shouldering everything. He should have asked for Sarah's opinion earlier and expressed his own thoughts sooner. He didn't know if Sarah regretted not opening up when facing the Arctic hare's expression of grief. She should have come to light earlier. The next day, Jason packed Sarah's luggage and sent it back through express delivery. When he called to inform Sarah, she was dancing with everyone in the park. With the accompaniment of joyful folk music, she responded to Jason's words. Jason shouted with a hoarse voice, "Mom. If you feel unwell, let me know." Sarah replied, "Got it." Jason shouted again, "If you ever want to come back, let me know." Sarah said, "Got it. And, if you need help, let me know too." Jason said, "Got it."